Welcome everyone to the newest Altered TCG episode. I guess we're calling them episodes now. I don't know. It's been a while. I'm gonna stumble through words for the next hour probably. I'm very excited to be able to show an exclusive card reveal from Altered second set, Trial by Frost. Thank you to Equinox for sending me the card. And honestly, I don't want to delay. This is the plan for the video. We're going to look at this card. We're going to talk about it. We're going to talk about the decks it could go in, the decks it could be good against. And then we're going to look at some other random cards from the set that have been shown by other content creators and kind of get a feel for the direction of the game and maybe some new deck archetypes and things like that. So let's not waste any more time and let's get to it.
When you are face to face with the difficulty, you are up against a discovery.
Alright, here we go. This is my exclusive preview card. Thank you again to Equinox. Lord Kelvin. We can go from left to right because it's the common rare out of faction. So it's a very simple card. And we're going to talk about my feelings and things like that, but it is an Axiom common and rare. The common version is a 4 from hand, 4 from reserve, 4/4/4. Just the number 4s everywhere. And then from reserve, you may exhaust target card in reserve. The rare version just drops the reserve cost to 3 and drops the mountain stat to 3 as well, but the exact same ability. And then the Muna version is the exact same as the rare version. So it's a card. This card, when I got it, I was like, all right, this is a veggies card. This is a put set mechanic on character, really push, especially in limited, really push what the set's trying to go for, right? Exhausting a card in reserve is one of the main mechanics of Trial by Frost. Definitely thematic to freezing something is essentially the flavor of this mechanic. And I was like, okay, this is neat. And the funniest thing to me is, and maybe we'll find more synergies when we look at the random cards, but the funniest thing to me is I think this card is better against Axiom than in Axiom. I'll go over the art after we talk about the mechanics a little bit. This slowing down the decks that want to play things from reserve, even for a turn, and just sort of mentally messing with your opponent, I think is the most fun thing to do. When do we get Lord Celsius? Oh yeah, that's a good point. I totally did not realize that it was Kelvin, as in the temperature. Yeah, it is quite expensive. I'm most interested in playing this in Muna and not Axiom, which is kind of an awkward thing. I could see this feels like a limited card to me. This feels like a draft card, a sealed card, more than a constructed card, which is totally cool. Games need all types of cards. I'll say that the whole set hasn't been revealed, and so maybe there will be more things coming where this would be your top end somehow. It is what they called soft sabotage. I do think, I might be wrong, but I think one of the Icebound cards wanted you to exhaust things in reserve. Someone can correct me if I'm wrong. The best part about this card, and people in chat have mentioned this already, is that there's a little sneezer shroom being frozen by Lord Kelvin's metal arm, and it actually changes in the art. So for the people who can't see it, it's the basic sneezer shroom, and then it levels up to the what looks kind of like the alt-art sneezer shroom from the Kickstarter box. We have energy bars, but do we have energy drinks? That's a good point. We need energy drinks too. It's a pretty simple card. You would call this the vegetables of the set. I think that every single faction basically has a character that does this exact same thing. Maybe with some differences when you get to rare, but maybe they haven't all been shown yet. I know for sure which faction's Jack Frost in. I remember that. one has basically the same ability, but like slightly different for a specific. I'm afraid of the specific amount. Muna and out of faction orders. Okay, thank you. I do like the art. I won't lie, the art's my favorite part about the card. Welcome to the rest of the preview video. We're going to look at random cards. We're not going to look at everything. I don't have time. We're going to scroll through, maybe look at a card or two from each faction, and just sort of explore the set very briefly. I'm a big proponent of not knowing every card of a set before it comes out, to be honest. We're choosing to look at this Puffin because this art is amazing. Alright, 2 from hand, 2 from reserve, 2/0/3. From anywhere, you may ready an exhausted card in reserve. So we're always going to look at the common first because you can have more commons in your card than your rares. This is a happy Puffin too. I mean, I know I just refreshed the page and it like doubled in number. You may ready an exhausted card in reserve. I would assume you can ready your opponents or your teammates because it doesn't specify like your own card. That's how I would read it, which is neat. I'm not sure of like the exact application like you would use this in. I mean, it's like anti-exhausted card, right? Let's see what the rare changes. So the rare, okay, the rare gains 1 boost. Yeah, that's a good point, a guy trying. This seems like a pretty cool 2v2 card. If you can like ready somebody else's card, that definitely makes your opponents have some interesting decisions depending on like the decks they're playing against. It might make you a target if this is more of an axiom ability. Is playing the rare worth 1 boost? I think there's probably other rares you would want to be playing that aren't this, that do more. Yeah. So it's a pretty versatile card, like Coin Pusher is saying. Like it either helps you or your teammate, or if your opponent has exhaust synergies, it hurts them. Pretty versatile. I could honestly, this is a bold statement. I could see that in the future, this effect being only 1 mana. But that's a bold statement. Alright, let's see, the out of faction is Izmir. So the Izmir version is like, oops, I made a mistake. I don't want that card to be exhausted in my reserve. I gotta wake it back up. It's interesting, because this feels like almost the opposite of a control piece. So, that's fun. Again, this game has good art. I just realized that there's other Puffins in the background. Yeah, we're gonna look at Gibil. This guy looks sweet. Alright, so next we have Gibil. He's a big boy or person. Thank you for the follow. 6 from hand, 6 from reserve, axiom. 5/5/5. It's a big one. This is top end. From anywhere, create a brass bug 2/2/2 robot token and target expedition. And then a support ability of activate the anywhere abilities of target permanent you control. So this is like kind of a combination of what, like Foundry Armorer and what's a card with this support ability? Slightly better Foundry Armorer with like this support ability. Rare Inari, thank you. It's interesting. This is definitely like top end. I think my issue with this card a little bit is I think I would rather just play Foundry Armorer. It's nice that it has both abilities, like 2 useful abilities for Axiom. 6 man is a lot, as I think people know in like constructed play. You'd probably only run like 1 of these. Again, the art's sweet. I know people in the Discord were asking for more Axiom cards that made robots. I don't know if they're... Yeah, I don't know. I don't think we've seen like an actual character that is an actual robot. Let's go ahead and look at the rare version. Ooh, okay, here we go. Alright, so everything's the same except for the ability. So the ability now is from anywhere. If you control 2 or more permanents, create 2 Brass Bug 2/2/2 tokens and target expedition. Otherwise, create only 1. Okay, that's interesting. I think, at least this is the first time I think I've seen like the otherwise clause of if you have this current status on your board, you get a bonus, and if you don't, you still get what the common makes. I actually think that's pretty cool from like a design perspective. It does make the choice between playing the common and rare a little more interesting to me, because it's kind of like, if you're planning on having 2 permanents, which Axiom often is, do you think getting 2 Brass Bugs is worth taking a rare slot? Or if you're like, if I only get 1, I'm okay with it, should you just play the common? Is sort of like what it comes down to. There's kind of a gray area between the 2 rarities of this card. And I think depending on if you're perfectly happy with 1, you would only play the common. But if you really want 2 and your deck is built for it, you would maybe play the rare. Again, still kind of expensive. I don't know that many decks that play cards that are up to 6 mana currently, but that may change. Same support ability though. Let's see. The out of faction is Ortis. Makes sense. It's the exact same thing, but in Ortis it even makes the Brass Bugs and not the Spies. I'm trying to think. Yeah, I guess that's true. That they always make the token that like the original one made, less changes. But when out of faction cards always make the token from like their original faction, right? Unless I'm not thinking of one. They never make like their own factions token. Obviously, Axiom has more synergies with Brass Bugs. Open the gates, Axiom makes Brass Bugs. Oh, interesting. So, I guess they just make a decision based on the card. Does Golrong just says tokens, right? It doesn't say like Ortis recruits get the boost. It just says tokens you play get the boost, right? That's like the only thing I would maybe try this in, because by the time you play this, you're hopefully at 8 mana. And I know that deck sometimes uses, what's it called, Grand Endeavor to like push forward after like being delayed for so long, so you could activate. No, you can't activate Grand Endeavor again because it's an at noon effect. Yeah, that's cool. That's fun. Yeah, that's kind of the only Ortis deck I could see wanting this like itself, but it's still neat. Maybe Sigismar too, but I think Sigismar wants to be like lower to the ground. Really like the art. Axiom has the vibe. For our first Bravos card, we're going to be looking at Gericht, Revered Duelist. Don't worry, I can go back to another card. It can be our second card. So, I like the art of this card too. It's so interesting seeing like art. I guess it's like Bravos' thing, but it's really interesting to me to see art of like people who look like they're in combat, considering the like themes of this game. It kind of throws me off a little bit, but it's cool art. So this is a 3 from hand, 4 from reserve Bravos card for a 3/3/3. And its ability is when I gain fleeting, I gain 1 boost. I can gain fleeting even if I already was already fleeting. Interesting. This so this is like it's kind of seasoned Blade Dancer with more steps, kind of, because when you play it from reserve, it would gain a boost, and then you can like helping hand to take fleeting off, and then it goes back to reserve, but it doesn't keep the boost. You could also do some like funny things with like, there are some support abilities that give something fleeting, so you could like give something fleeting, remove fleeting, kind of push it up stats that way. let's go ahead and look at the rare version. This feels like a card where the rare version's gonna like make it come to life. All right, so it's the exact same card, except it only has the if I would gain fleeting, I gain 1 boost instead. Interesting. Yeah. Okay. I was like reading this and I was like, so a guy trying just said in chat that it basically never gains fleeting because it gains 1 boost instead. I was reading this card and I was like, this is good, but my brain can't compute. Yeah, this is cool. So basically from reserve, it's always a 4/4/4, and you can keep playing it because it never gains fleeting. That's cool. I would, yeah. So I'm not a big fan of the card red in Bravos currently. I don't think it does enough. I would probably replace red with this card in like every Bravos deck that runs red, personally. The rare version is cool. Like this is, I think this kind of card, the difference between the common and the rare is so clear that you would play the rare version of this. Like it is significantly better than the common version. Man, this is the wait. No, this is like actually really cool because I was saying there's probably an ad going on. I was saying that there are support abilities that give something fleeting. Yeah, like that kind of unique ability, or just like even if you have support abilities that are like give a character fleeting, if there's nothing you want to give fleeting, you can just make this bigger. Like it makes those support abilities way more versatile, which is cool to see. I could see this in like kind of a mid-rangey control Bravos deck too. Yeah, this is cool. This might be my favorite card we've looked at so far. Let's see what the out of faction does, or what it's in. Lyra. If I would gain fleeting, I gain 1 boost. This makes sense in Lyra. Um, Finn, Finn and Crowbar. This slots into Finn and Crowbar nicely to have a character that actually can push for an expedition more easily, because Lyra, you know, kind of lacks in stats what it makes up for in like weird utility. So I definitely think that this could be a role player in that deck. Yeah, this is cool. Definitely some cool design space with this one. Yeah. Yeah, that's a great example, using acapella training and Lyra to give it fleeting so that it gets a boost instead, which like I think cards that make core mechanics of the game have like kind of different play options are really good design spaces, because it means that it keeps your opponent's like thoughts up in the air, I guess. I don't know why you're biting me, cat. Because yeah, you could give their thing fleeting, but if you don't really need to, you can make this 1 boost bigger, which is like it's interesting tech. For our second Bravos card, we've got Eat Me Energy Bars. It's an interesting name. 3 from hand, 3 from reserve, Bravos card. It is a new card type. We've seen at least one other card of this type when they first like showed a few preview cards. This is an expedition permanent gear. Below it has this little wrench symbol and says play me in an expedition. If it moves forward, I go to reserve during rest. It's like an item that's supposed to help your characters in an expedition, and then like if you fail to move forward, the item stays there. Its ability is, if there's only one character in my expedition, it is gigantic. It is considered present in each of your expeditions. So it makes something gigantic. I could see that being useful at common, like this version of the card, but I think it depends on what's the threshold on how big the character has to be worth playing. Eat Me is meant to refer to Alice. Interesting. Because if this is 3 mana, like how much do you need to pay for the character to be the right size to be like, okay, this is worth doing? Because I don't think paying like 1 for a 1/1/1 is enough. Ooh, interesting. When you play out of factions Carver, you count as in both expeditions and you move both back. Like, that's cool. Like, that's fun tech. See what the rare does. Whoa, wait. The art changed a lot. That like really threw me off. Is this like the most an art's changed on a card? You pay 2 to 3 for a season guy? That makes sense. I like that. This art change is crazy. It's like really distracting me. Sorry. Okay. The rare version is 1 cost cheaper from both. And then from anywhere I gain fleeting. So kind of typical with like rare versions. They either like gain or lose fleeting for a lot of different cards. But the same effect. It is considered present in each of your expeditions. See, that's so interesting because the way this is worded, I wouldn't think Sakara Brew would trigger on both expeditions. But if it does, that's like pretty sweet. Because it like, I think they could have worded it a little better. Because it doesn't say like the characters played in both expeditions. It says it's considered present in both expeditions. Yeah. I get like what everyone's saying on like how the interaction works, but the way the card is worded, it doesn't sound like it would work that way. But since it does, like that's pretty sweet. Man, that's so brutal. So to do that combo, would you play the rare just to make it easier to do? They ruled both are facing you. The ability triggers only once, and Sakura says expedition facing me. They ruled both are facing you. I get like when you like think about it, when you go through the steps, it makes sense. I do think that the like reminder text could have been worded better, but that's just me. Combo just 9 mana Celebration Day though. It's actually technically better than Celebration Day because you can push them back and win both sides. So you can get like a pretty big advantage. It is a lot of mana though, but it's pretty fun. I'd be curious to see if this has like ends up being a competitive like combo. Do we think it's easier or harder than the Izmir I'm gonna stall the game forever deck? I guess we'll have to wait and find out. Might be some more cards coming to synergize with this plan. We're gonna look at Heimdall. He's got some big pipes. I like this art. That was your card, right? I knew that sounded familiar. Yeah, I want to look at that one. Alright, so next up we've got Heimdall, who I believe is from Norse mythology. Somebody can correct me if I'm wrong. So we've got a 4 from hand, 4 from reserve, 4/4/4. Hey, it's more 4/4/4s. They're like, God, there's a lot of 4s in this set, is what it feels like to me. From hand, you may have target character switch expeditions. So it's hooked on a stick. Best card in the set. Calling it now. I'm Norse mythology, just copied it. That's yeah, that's funny. Yeah, I'm calling it now. Best card in the set. Hooked is the best card in the first set. This is the best card in this set. I'm like only exaggerating a little bit. I would play this every day. All right, let's see if the rare is even better than the common. Okay, interesting. So still a 4/4 cost, but the stats changed to a 5/0/5. So now it's good in Auroch, which makes me like it even more. Its ability changes slightly. So from hand, you may have target character or expedition permanent switch expeditions. It leaves its expedition and joins controller's other expedition. So I know that there's the like winter coat, or there's like the gear and Lyra that makes it so your 0 statted things aren't 0 statted, I think is how it works. So that would be an interesting thing to like switch around in Auroch. Here's my question, because I wouldn't think it would work, but because of the other card we looked at and the Sakara Brew combo, when a character switches expeditions, would that trigger Auroch again if they're a 0 stat character? Or does that not count as like playing the character again? I would think that it doesn't. Yeah. That's unfortunate because if that counted as playing a character, this card would be so good in Auroch. Because it would mean that, like, when you have 5 mana, you can play a 1-drop with 0. You could play this, and then switch the 1-drop with 0 and get 3 counters on that turn. Like, that would be a big help to Auroch. I don't think it will work that way, but I kind of wish it did. I'd be very excited for this card. I still think it's cool. I like the hooked type effects, and you can do this to your own or your opponent's characters or expedition permanents. I don't think we've seen enough expedition permanents to know if they're worth like switching around yet, but they could be. And the out of faction is Ortis. Or we're getting a lot of Ortis out of factions. You may have target character switch expeditions. Interesting. So this is the same as the common version. Do we know if there's a reason why some in the first set all out of factions were the same as their commons, right? Or am I just remembering wrong? Because like my reveal card, it was the rare and the out of faction that were the same. And this one is the common and out of faction that's the same, which is interesting. Okay, some were different. Okay, there must be some kind of logic to it. Yeah, I do think I would probably try the rare version in Auroch. I do think Auroch needs as many zero statted things as it can get. And with that new gear, I think it sort of alleviates part of the problem, maybe, with the deck. So, yeah, I'm excited to try this in Auroch. Next, we've got Sleight of Hand, showing another new mechanic for the set. This is a 1 from hand, 1 from reserve that has cooldown. If I go to reserve after my effect resolves, exhaust me, exhausted cards can't be played and have no support abilities. Exchange target character and reserve with a card from your hand. This card essentially puts 2 cards into your reserve and 1 card back in your hand because it will put itself, if you're playing it from your hand, into your reserve as well. Cooldown is interesting. I am curious how people are going to handle it because all the heroes still only have 2 reserve slots. And a card with cooldown taking up a reserve slot, I think, has to be really good to keep it around and not keep like a character or something else around. Again, there's synergies with exhausted cards in reserve. There will probably be more coming. Yeah, hard with Ouroboros, Inkcaster. Yeah. This is definitely adds more to the like looping reserve stuff that Lyra has, which I think is cool. It just helps set up like support abilities and like other things like that really easily, or from reserve effects. I think it's a cool card, and it's only 1 mana, so the common version. Let's look at the rare version and see if that kind of like solidifies my opinion. Okay, so the rare version changes to you can put any card and not just a character. Yeah, that's pretty cool. It's interesting. I just thought about this, but the game doesn't really have that many like discard from hand effects yet, but I think eventually it will have more. And this card can also protect like a card you want more if they like, I guess they could still sabotage it. It's interesting. I definitely think it's a cool card in Lyra. A lot of like synergy there to like put things back in your hand and then put something in reserve you want in reserve. Like that faction's kind of built around that kind of thing. I am curious how people are going to deal with cooldown. Now, there's the cards that will ready exhausted cards in reserve, so you could like put this in and then play it again, but I don't know why you would really. I can't think of very many scenarios where you would want to play this card twice in a turn, but I can't think of very many scenarios where this isn't the card that you discard from reserve at the end of the turn, especially in something like Finn, where you typically end up with like 4 or 5 cards in reserve every turn. So right now, this card to me doesn't say cooldown, it says fleeting, because I think you're just going to discard it in most cases, but I could be wrong. Maybe there's going to be some like really spicy, interesting tech with it. Really cool utility right now, though. Really fun mixing things up card. And the out of faction is Izmir. Makes sense. Izmir does have some exhausted cards and reserve synergies, so I could see this being pretty useful in Izmir. Here's the real question, though. For people who don't know, my favorite deck I built in the first set was a characterless Izmir deck with Aphanis as the hero. Would I play this in characterless Izmir? I don't think so. It is a 1-drop spell, which is useful in that deck, but it doesn't give me a token. It doesn't draw, I mean, it kind of draws a card, and it doesn't remove anything. So this might be a pass in characterless Izmir, but I'll try it out for sure. Alright, for our first Muna card, we've got Persephone. I'm probably saying that wrong. I apologize. This is the 2 from hand, 2 from reserve, 3/0/0 Muna card with my region is forest in addition to its other types. Persephone? Thank you. That's harder to say. So, simple card, but importantly, slam dunk and Ren and Orchid, right? Just make your region forest. Ren and Orchid draws you a card, you put something into reserve, I think is how their ability works. Like, I think this is kind of a no-brainer, but it does show kind of another area they're playing with in this set, which is like very specific region stuff. This is the first one we've looked at, but it's definitely cool. I'll look at the rare to see if what I think might changes. Yeah, okay, yep. I knew exactly that this is what it would do. So the from hand cost goes up to 3. The stats are the same, and the ability changes to exactly what I thought it would change to, which is my region and the region of the expeditions facing me are forest and lose their other types. Because that was the thing I was kind of worried about. I think if you're in Ren and Orchid, you play the rare version of this, because the common version doesn't remove the other types. Your opponent could still move if they need like water or mountain and you're not covering those types with your own characters, but the rare version just makes it so that only forest works. So really good in Ren and Orchid. This card's like pretty cool. Ren and Orchid is my favorite Muna hero, so that's fun. And the out of faction is Lyra. Interesting. Would I play this in Lyra? Obviously, like the 0 stats and Auroch, I don't think taking up a rare slot really does anything in Auroch. Interesting. Can anyone think of a scenario where you would play this in Lyra? Because I'm struggling. That's not like I would rather play another rare. Yeah, Auroch, but I just feel like there's probably another rare I would rather be playing. It is useful though. No, I guess I would play it in Auroch. It does like slow down your opponent potentially. That's fun. Again, yeah, it has winter outfits attached to itself. Yeah, that's true. I take it all back. I'll play this in Auroch. Maybe not 3 copies, but it should be good. The art is so good. This might be my favorite art in the set. So next for Muna, we have Icebound Taiga. Now, this card was shown, I believe, at a convention a few weeks or a month ago, so a lot of people have probably seen it already. It is a good example of kind of a new cycle of cards that's going to be in this set. I believe there's 1 or 2 in every faction that basically work the same way. Not too many Muna cards have been previewed, or they've been previewed, but they're not in the database yet. So everyone should check in on Monday, and there'll probably be some new spicy Muna cards to check out. But Icebound Taiga, a 3 from hand, 3 from reserve Muna card. It is a landmark permanent site. Were they always called sites? Is that a new like subtype? I don't know why that doesn't sound familiar. It says when you play a character in Forest, I gain a trial counter. When I gain my third trial counter, sacrifice me. If you do, create a Dragon Shade 5/5/5 illusion token and target expedition, then it gains anchored. So, like I was saying, there's like a cycle of these cards. There's one or two in every faction. They basically all have the same result. You do something to put a trial counter on it. When it has enough trial counters, you sacrifice it and you get a 5/5/5 dragon that has some kind of bonus. So the Muna one has anchored. They're cool, but I think the question is, the ones that are gonna see play are the ones where the turn difference between playing the landmark and getting the dragon are the smallest, because you can't really take that long to get the dragon because you'll have lost before then. So there's definitely other ones. We're not going to look at all of them in this stream or this video. Definitely look up the other Icebound cards if you're curious what other factions get. Okay, so they used to be permanent landmark. Okay, yeah. So now they're having subtypes to permanents because they have gears, and this is the site. Yeah, that's right, and that makes sense. It always kind of confused me because the hero cards just say landmark on them, or they say permanent on them, but then like everyone guessed that there was going to be more types coming. So let's check out the rare. So the rare is the exact same. The from reserve cost is 2 instead of 3. I probably wouldn't play the rare version of this if I was going to play this card. I don't think that's enough of a difference. And then the out of faction version is Lyra, which is the same as the rare version. Kind of cool if you're playing like Lyra Festival, and you can kind of set up for the Lyra Festival win with this, although it's a lot of planning ahead. It's very in your face to your opponent, and if they have landmark removal, then like it's very easy to get rid of. But Lyra does tend to play low cost characters that are sort of more like utility, so I could see this turning into the dragon relatively quickly, because you could take turn 1 off or day 1 off and play this, and then you could potentially get to 3 counters on day 2 depending on what you had in your hand. It's not impossible, because it doesn't say that they have to have forest, you just have to play a character in forest. So if you like skip day 1 and you're in both starting zones, and then you play 3 characters on day 2, which might be a little hard, but it's definitely not impossible. I could see this making the dragon pretty quickly in Lyra, especially like Finn and Crowbar, because you see cards in reserve too. I kind of like it. I'm not sure, like, in the end how useful it's gonna be, but I think you could do it fairly quickly. Field Reinforcements, a spell maneuver. This is a new subtype, right? Disruption is another subtype. Maneuver. This is a 2 from hand, 2 from reserve. Fleeting, choose 1. If each of your expeditions is behind or tied, you may choose both. Okay, that's cool. Draw a card or create an Orders Recruit 1/1/1 soldier token and target expedition. So is it a maneuver because it's a modal card and you have multiple options? Because that's kind of cool, because that means that this subtype's gonna be like pretty versatile moving forward. This card's really cool. I could see this being played in like Sigismar and Golrong pretty easily. 2 cost to draw a card in Ortis is like not bad, and if you're behind you get a body too. Like that's pretty nice. I would be very happy to play this. I would almost play this over like oh my god, the like 2-drop Ortis character that makes a body. I know that technically you get more stats, but I would almost rather just see more cards in my hand. But that just might be a playstyle preference. Let's check out what the rare does. Okay, the rare loses fleeting and gains cooldown. Now compared to the Lyra card, this is a card that I could potentially see wanting to keep around and not discarding. Ortis doesn't have the same problem as Lyra of like filling up their reserve really heavily, really easily. So I could see keeping this card around and not discarding it because it could draw you a card, could make another recruit. I kind of like this in Golrong a lot because one of the problems I've found with Golrong is you spend so much of your early turns slowing down your opponent that when you get to your later turns, you kind of ran out of gas. And this sort of covers both areas. Like, it will slow down your opponent potentially and give you card advantage later in the game. Yeah, I kind of actually really like this in Golrong. I'd see the out of faction is, yes, perfect. This is what I want. It's Izmir. This is going straight into characterless Izmir. It's the perfect card. It makes a token, which is the only way that deck can win, and it draws a card. And since I play a Faunus in that deck, it gives a boost. Yeah, this is like slam dunk. I'm playing 3 of these in characterless Izmir, no question. Best card in the set. No, that's not true. The Hooked on a Body is the best card in the set. Now, if you're not playing that weird meme deck, is this still good in Izmir? I think so. I think this is good in like a longer game plan kind of control Izmir deck. A 1/1/1's not amazing, and it's a little expensive to be a pseudo after you, but it does replace itself potentially. Izmir is sometimes behind until like the mid game. Honestly, like turn or day 1, this is like kind of nice. You get a body, you get a each of your X's behind or tie you may choose with. Yeah. Okay, hold on. This is like this card's like crazy actually. This on day 1 is really cool. Because even in Ortis, if you're playing like Sigismar or Golrong, you're tied. So you draw a card and you make a body. Like, that's actually kind of insane for a turn 1 play, and you still have 1 mana. Like, this card is like really good. I would be shocked if this card didn't see competitive play. I don't know if it'll see like competitive play in both factions, but I'll play it in characterless Izmir. Oh my god, this day 1 in characterless Izmir is like the perfect card. We've got Blizzard, a 5 from hand, 5 from reserve spell disruption. It has fleeting and send to reserve each character from target expedition, then exhaust them. This is crazy. This is, wait, what? This card has to have typo on. This is just like, does Kraken's Wrath completely discard the cards, or does it just put them in reserve? Because I think I would play this over Kraken's Wrath. Because, like, yeah, they can play it again, but, like, it puts them in reserve. Yeah, like, I feel like I would just... This doesn't have a cost limitation. It costs the same as Kraken's Wrath. It's only 1 expedition, but to be honest, most of the time when you Kraken's Wrath, you're mostly targeting 1 expedition anyway. So, just the common version of this seems like really good. Really good control card. Does the Izmir Icebound permanent say whenever... It says whenever you exhaust a card in reserve, right? Or is that one of the Axiom ones? If that's one of the Izmir ones, then this is like... So this could potentially just like put 3 trial counters on its own, like later in the game. That's cool. The rare version, same cost, same, it counts when you exhaust an opponent's card or if a cooldown card exhausts itself. Yeah, that's cool. I like that, like, synergy right there. So same card basically, except it adds I cost 1 less if there are 2 or more exhausted cards in reserve. So this counts both reserves. Yeah, I think it's any reserve. Considering exhausting cards in reserve is like a big part of the set, this is probably going to be for 4 cost more often than people think. 4 cost, put an expedition into reserve basically. It's just good. It's just a good stall card. When it says target expedition, does that mean specifically like it doesn't change my opinion of the card, but does it mean like the hero expedition, so it would reserve your characters and your opponent's characters, or is it specifically like, yeah, so it means like opponent's hero expedition. It has the opponent or player qualifier to it. Yeah, this card seems great. Even if it was both players, your hero, opponent hero, your companion, and yeah, even if it was both players' expeditions, I would still think this card is good. Now I just think it's great. Like this in Akesha, the like stall out plan seems great. This is gonna be annoying as hell. That's all I'm gonna say. And then the out of faction is Axiom. So same as the common. I know some people enjoy playing like Control Axiom, so they'll probably try this out, but it definitely feels at base level more of an Izmir card. So for our second Izmir card, we're going to look at Flutter of Moths, a 6 from hand, 6 from reserve card with I cost 1 less if there are 2 or more exhausted cards in reserve. Again, that counts your opponent's and your own. So you could have an exhausted card and they could have an exhausted card. And then it's create 3 mana moth 2/2/2 illusion tokens distributed as you choose among any number of target expeditions. Again, this is going straight into characterless Izmir. I guess I have to play that deck again with all these new cards for sure. At 6 mana, that's turn 2, 3, 4. So that's turn 4 at the earliest. I could see there being 2 or more exhausted cards in reserve, so this is likely to cost 5, and it gives you 6 stats total, basically. And it's a spell, so if you're playing like a Faunus, it will boost something. It's cool. It's a lot of mana, but I think in the right deck, it could be interesting. Let's check out the rare version. Okay, well, that part changed. Okay, no, it didn't change as much as I thought it did. I don't know why I thought it changed a lot. So this goes up to a 7/7. Interesting. But it gets, I cost 1 less for each exhausted card in reserve. And it doesn't have fleeting. Does this one have fleeting? No. Oh my god. And it makes the same 3 moth tokens. So if you are exhausting cards in reserve, like the rare version is really good. I don't think it would ever be free. Well, Izmir has a lot of like exhausted cards in your own reserve synergies. Hello, Chopper. I don't know why you're trying to climb on my arm. God. So I could see this being pretty good. I could see it being 5 mana pretty easily, because that's essentially what the common version ends up being when you exhaust 2 things. So this will be 5 mana as often as this one is 5 mana. Supportability on Moth Larva. Yeah. I could see this pretty commonly being down to like 4, even 3 mana. Which, if you're paying 4 mana and getting 6 stats worth of bodies, I think like that's pretty good. I'm thinking because I'm going to try this in characterless Izmir, but I don't actually know if this version's better than the common version because I don't know how many exhaust cards I will put in that deck. But if I put a decent amount, like this rare version is kind of nuts. Now I almost wish Blizzard was you and your opponent's expedition, because then this being free with like disruption packed into your turn would be kind of insane. Like imagine you play Blizzard, you put in reserve and exhaust all your characters and your opponent's characters in one expedition, and then you play this for 3 and get 666. Like that would be kind of crazy. Late in the game, you could still do that if you're only putting like your characters' cards in reserve. But most of the time, you don't have 5+ characters that are non-tokens in one expedition. But it still could be like a fun thing that happens every once in a while. And the out of faction is Axiom. They're really giving Axiom some control out of faction cards. Oh, this is a maneuver too. Were spells called maneuvers before? So my theory that maneuvers were always modal cards is wrong. Mana Flare plus 1 exhausted card equals this for free. Okay. Okay, could be a subtype of spells for. I just like could not remember. It's an interesting word for a subtype for spells. It's cool, but I'm kind of failing to see the the mechanical consistency between them. Disruption makes sense. They disrupt your opponent. Maneuvers, I don't know. I thought they were like flexible cards, but not really. So this is the same as the rare. It's mainly an Ortis thing, things that affect the board presence. Okay, that makes sense. When you explain it that way, that makes sense. I'm trying to think. Like, I think that this being cheap in Axiom will be pretty easy too, from what we've seen. But I think it's more interesting in Izmir, personally. If it made brass bugs or robots, because then you get all the like robot boost synergies, this would be like pretty cool in Axiom, but right now I'm not too sure. We haven't shown one of the last new mechanics in the set, so we're going to show a third Axiom card just to make sure we're covering our bases in this little preview video. So we've got Kelonic Heater. It is a 2 from hand, 2 from reserve Axiom card. That is a gear, so this is the second gear we've shown. And it has from anywhere exhausted resupply. Put the top card of your deck in reserve, then exhaust it. You may play exhausted characters from your reserve in my expedition. Okay, so we think, at least so far, exhausted resupply is mostly an Axiom thing, I believe. This is kind of cool because it sort of supersedes. It ignores the downside of exhausted resupply because you can then play characters that are exhausted in your reserve. Now it is 2 mana. You would want something that costs not a ton to be able to play that's exhausted in your reserve already. This is another card that I could see playing day 1 and being like, it's okay if I don't move, or you have a 1-drop in hand, you play this, you get a card in your reserve that if it's a 1-drop, you can play it right away. If it's not, then you just can wait and play it on day 2. Like it's delayed card advantage. The same way that exhausting a card in reserve is like super delayed or very soft sabotage. This is like soft resupply. There are some synergies with exhausting cards in your reserve, so that will definitely come up too, but let's look at the rare version. So the rare version is 3 from hand, 1 from reserve, but the ability changes to only from your hand do you exhaust resupply. Am I crazy? Is the common version not just better? I can't think of a scenario where I would play the rare version over the common version. It has the same ability. You may play exhausted characters from your reserve in my expedition. If I'm playing it from my hand to resupply, it costs more. So I need an even cheaper character to be able to play that got exhaust resupplied. I would just play the common version basically every time. I can't think of a scenario where the reserve cost being 1 matters. The rare proc Sierra from reserve for 1. I can understand that intention, but to me, like, that's not enough to take up the rare slot. Yeah. I really wish it was from reserve you exhausted resupply, because that being one cost and doing Sierra and being able to play something that's exhausted from your reserve, like, that would be cool. But this is, I would probably play the common version. Let's see what the out of faction is. Izmir. This makes sense in Izmir. Izmir has a lot of like exhaust stuff. You could probably in both factions set it up pretty easily to exhaust something and then play this, get exhausted resupply, have a couple options for what you're gonna play with the card's ability. And it's important to remember that like if you don't advance, this sticks around. Although I think if you're playing this and planning to play something from reserve due to its ability, you're probably trying to advance or you're trying to disrupt your opponent. I kind of just like the common version of it. I don't think I'd play the rare version, at least with what we've seen so far. But that should be the final mechanic to show off in the set. There we have it. There's our very, very short, very condensed preview of what's been shown for Trial by Frost so far. Now, this was not an exhaustive or extensive preview. Just wanted to show the key mechanics and a couple cards from every faction, kind of explore what the game's going for in its second set. I think my favorite art so far is probably Persephone. For other cards, if you want to look, the card gallery on the Altered website that I'm scrolling through right now is being updated on a regular basis after all of the content creators have shown their card. So be sure to check back Monday to see some other new cards, and throughout the rest of the week. I believe the third and final wave of previews is starting next Friday, the 18th or the 17th. It's the 17th or the 18th of next week. So all the cards should be previewed before the set comes out next Saturday. Thank you. So be sure to keep checking back in. I probably won't be making another preview video. I like going in as blind as I can, and I'm sure people will tell me some spicy cards when they see them. But I want to thank everyone for joining for the recording of this video and getting to show off my exclusive card from Equinox. Thanks again to the company for sending that over to me. I hope everyone's having a good life. I hope you're having a good time, and I'll catch you in the next one. Bye bye.